All right, folks, welcome back. A couple days into the final week, so this is our last stream, right? Our last session, the week 10 session for module 32, Red Harvest Part 2. We'll save the commentary and stuff. There has been some development, some interesting management company developments, and today I guess I'll talk a little bit about the tank related things I perused through the Discord. The Discord gets really messy after a while, so it's kind of tough to follow the string of thoughts, but I have a few commentaries about that. It won't be that far from what I mentioned the last time on week 9 about the general idea of providing feedback, or the balance of what what is trending to maintain a live service game versus this whole idea of consistently balancing for some sort of non-competitive process that has been made competitive by existing mentality, right? And that mentality is more one that's baked in from the collective type of community Neverwinter has. We'll talk more about those things again. I don't want to belabor the point most of the time. When I think of live service games, the TLDR about my personal preferences about live service games is balance is overrated, right? That's a really hot take. The TLDR, these are hot takes. Balance is overrated if you're running a live service game a lot of times, because it's often about the consistency of horizontal progression, while horizontal development and introduction, while providing some level of vertical progression. But generally, the focus on horizontal innovation tends to provide a generalized feeling of vertical progression. Constantly balancing things makes it so that it feels that there's a loss and a gain and a compromise constantly. And this live service game is largely PvE, and PvE games tend, with community, like overall generally positive community building and niche building and sub-community building of live service games, thrive under non-competitive conditions. So we'll talk about that in a bit. All right, let's hop in. This shouldn't take too long, like 30 minutes. I think we clocked in at 30 minutes for one character. I might do, between now, like module 32 to module 32.5 or 33, I might find myself bringing up the barbarian through this campaign, which again takes like 30 minutes a day. We'll see, because there is some incentives to bring up the barbarian to code or to level. Right now we've done this with our Justicar, so that's what we'll stick to. And in terms of time investment, I believe this reflects the content's length and what they desire of my time, right? At least that's how I interpret it. So we're not incentivized to do this for multiple characters, despite the recent patch that allows you to exchange currency. That doesn't reduce the length or time investment of repetitious, non-engaging, reductive, like repetitious behavior, right? Like running something a couple times, like hundreds of times. I'm not really into that type of thing when it comes to live service, so I'm not the target audience. The people who are the target audience, they can defend it all they want, I mean, obviously I spend the amount of time that I believe I can use to gather what I want from the PvE content. Okay. So, off to the bazaar. And then we run. We do the 3 weeklies. I feel like it would be wonderful if there was a weekly for every single week, like 10 weeklies. That'd be pretty sweet. And when I mean by weeklies, I'm not specifically talking about like the payout for the currency, as opposed to having a bunch of repetitions or heroic encounter developments. I'm more of an episodic kind of guy, so this is sharing my opinions about how live service works. Like works for me, like how I prefer live service. I like episodic things, so if it's every 2 weeks an episode comes out that deals with the campaign task, or every week there's like one event to look forward to, I'm down with that. Because repetition, as opposed to habit formation, like habit formation can come in the form of repetition, which that's fine. The Neverwinter community tends to pride on burst of repetition, as opposed to like you eat a lot in small periods of time, like aggressively eat a lot. I'm more of a, I want to snack on something over a really long period of time to form that habit. So in moderation, that's what I feel is what makes live service incredibly ingenious from a business standpoint, while at the same time psychologically pragmatic from that standpoint, as well as potentially healthierly balanced if used in a way that is less conducive to long swaths and periods of time of investment. Versus, obviously some people will say, oh well, I only have like 1 week a day to play these things, so I prefer to be able to do all of it at once, like front load it onto a weekend. That's fair. Like, I'm not saying that my perspective will be able to cater to someone who prefers to spend like all of their weekend doing all the tasks that they could have spaced out for the entire week. That's right. Different lives, different requirements. Myself, despite having these kind of things, I schedule around small bursts. Like, I enjoy stopping in for my cup of coffee for like 10 minutes each day. It's incredibly habit forming and it's moderated. I'm not tempted to be like, it's obviously have some FOMO considerations, but I'm not tempted to spend incredibly long hours of any particular day. And that's how I treat live service. Like, I hop in, do some RTQs and random things like battle pass related things once a day. That's fair enough for me. And then when I see content updates and whatnot, I also treated that similarly. I enjoy watching my episode, like my 30-minute or my 20-minute episode of a show every week, like once a week, something like that. That's habit formation, is syndication. The behavior of Neverwinter online, like the group, is an older group, and it's predicated on older mentalities about grinding, farming, that type of thing. And while Neverwinter is not strictly a live service game, and it wasn't originally a live service game, that community is more used to that type of thing. Or like, oh, if you didn't want to grind, you shouldn't be playing an MMORPG. That's not true. There are MMORPGs that now, like, times have changed. It's kind of ironic because those individuals who tend to argue about, oh well, this is just a different game now, and that times of old haven't changed. Like they won't be the old school, or trying to preserve things and complain about preserving things when time have changed. Those would be the same people who make that argument and still talk about like gold standards as though it was in the past tense. Like, oh, it's never going to be as good as it once was. And I'm like, well, if you accept that, you wouldn't talk about it like that. It kind of hypocritical. Like, I don't really ever talk about going back to the days of grinding, grinding and equating to old school standards. I think times have changed, and it'd be interesting to, instead of constantly balancing and predicating on existing patterns, which is a preservationist way of saying, and for the record, you can do that if you want. I'm merely speaking that I enjoy the idea of new spins. Whoops. Get this. New spins on things. I look forward to those things instead of constantly thinking about them in a fearful way. Like, oh, what happens to all my hard-earned things from the past? Or what if it doesn't feel the same anymore? I don't know if I want things to feel the same personally. That's going to be the center theme, the center theme of some of the commentary later in a little bit here. Let's go rescue these guys. There's more about old as well. Old is back, so to speak. There's been a development. There's some wishful thinking about people bringing back old things. Let's get these guys home. Or not really home, but to the sacrificial chamber. One last little pillar. Okie dokie. Alright. How did we do it last time? I think we're gonna go this way. I like this path. So we go down to the end here. Get into our purple room. Get bopped off our feet because traps are OP. Get close to the wall. Alright. One down, two more. Get down the stairs. Red room should be at the end of the hall. Oops. Why are you running in the opposite direction? Butthead. Okay. Alright. Stuff from the beholder room. Hopefully not trigger. Oh, too far. Okay. Alright, now we head out here. Staircase. Right here. Takes us to and to the left. Liberate these guys only to sacrifice them, I suppose. Okay. Take our left. Get in here. Sacrifice all the peeps. Hello? Okay. Walk in here. What is going on? Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Hey. Head back. Back up to the Dream Vault. One last time. For this guy anyways. Patch hang up. Anytime now. I don't know why that keeps happening, but that's okay. It puts us on. It places us on the platform. What the heck? Wait, why did they double spawn? What is this nonsense? Excuse me? Can't see. Hmm. Please. Okay. Could open some lockboxes. How many lockboxes have happened? Oh, maybe not. Okay. All right. Every time I see like things like this, I think of Clear Obscure. It's my default now. Oh, what this looks like. It's okay. Oh, I just straight up skip. Okay. Okie dokie. So that's our 3. Need 2 sets of 5. We should be at 80 right now. Let's go do magic mirror and disturbance. Whoops. Correction. This is pretty much what I'm going to do for the barbarian, probably. Not so much the fighter. Unless something really compels me to do so. More on that in a bit here. Because technically, the way these things work is you complete the campaign for some sort of vertical progression, but they are often completely, that vertical progression is like every other module, because it would involve doing the quote-unquote the end game part, and if that is not accessible, then the campaign itself can only offer as much as a couple of boons, if not that, maybe a little bit more than that. Like effectively, this recording session for all the 10 weeks are doing the task. Quite almost literally, for me, nothing is gained in terms of vertical progression. Largely because trials. And then the still debatable and rate of farming and whatnot. Hello? Where did the image go? The heck? Yeah, we're basically doing it for completion. In terms of progress, the character progress, that's the most live servicey part of it. We're doing it for the sake of completing it and seeing the stuff. Basically, it's just seeing the stuff. I enjoy seeing the stuff. The gear, kind of. It's okay. I used to be pretty interested in gear design, but I think because of the accessibility question, right? Or the lack of accessibility, because they constantly tier and create a unnecessary competitive environment in a PvE game. It's a moot point. You can talk about gear all day, but it would elicit wishful thinking. Because when you talk about gear, for me, it has to go through the entire process, right? You have to loot. You have to play the game. You have to play the gacha. The pseudo gacha that is an archaic loot system. So I don't play that. I don't typically cover things that will elicit hopium or desires when they're not accessible. It's not my kind of satisfaction. Very different from delay gratification, which some people may argue, oh, well, that's a form of delay gratification. You work really hard, you grind, and you eventually get it because you stuck it through. You can have delay gratification without needing it to be based on chance. In fact, delay gratification, one of the hallmarks of delay gratification is that through hard work, through consistent work and management skills and whatnot, that you are most likely to be accessible to it. So removing looting percentage altogether would be the golden rule about emphasizing and having people be satisfied with delay gratification. It's obfuscated and it's demeaned and belittled and devalued by the essence of luck, which this game predicates on in order to keep people playing. We're not gonna beat around the bush about that. I emphasize quite a lot on habit formation. Alright, so we get this little fun doohickey illusion, right? Hooray! And then which one's the boons? So let's see, what are the boon requirements? The boon requirements requires these pendants, which are apparently kind of tough to get enough of for other things. Anyways, there you have it. So I guess we can place this. Here. All right. So we have some things to talk about, right? Some interesting developments. So first, I want to talk about the usual thing that I have planned. I try to go through, like, peruse the Discord. Try to peruse the Discord and find the original post. And I could only find one of the posts. So I'm not sure if there's the other ones. I could have sworn there was something on... It might just be Dreadnought. I thought there might have been a Vanguard post. I'm pretty sure there wasn't just a card post, but I did manage to find the Sentinel post, the official Sentinel post, the one that was posted by one of the members of the dev group, right? And it talked about Sentinels, and largely the sentiments are fairly consistent with the many years prior, since the Sentinel was splintered from, like, the Vanguard, right, when they split in module 13, something like that. Wow, saying module 13, no, it's a module 13. I think it's 13. Wow, saying that because this is module 32. Pretty sure it's 13. Under Mountain, either 13 or 16. I think 13 was Under Mountain. That's when the Sentinel branch was introduced, and I have been using that Sentinel branch since then. And then somewhere after the Sentinel was kind of lined up, we picked up the Justicar, and then within, like, the last 3 years or something, the Vanguard again, post module 13. The Sentinel sentiments are fairly consistent. What I mentioned before is it's generally always from the perspective, like 99% of the time, is from the perspective of balance and comparative, and bringing things in line. So the thing that the Sentinel feedback is, Sentinels need damage mitigation that brings them in line with the other tanks. It's constantly comparative analyses, like, oh, tank A doesn't have this, so it needs you would want this in order to be in line with the other ones. And then Justicar has these, so if they gain this, then the other tanks should have them. So it's the typical stories, and the center things that Justicar, like Sentinels, lack are damage mitigation during rage, right? Their core mechanic. A lot of their mechanics have delays and animation delays that are not present and more responsive in the other ones. These, I'm basically reading through some of the consensus, and it's typically, to sound very generalizing, the idea is it highlights all the things that are absent in Sentinel, where it's present in Vanguards and Justicars, and then vice versa. There is one core consensus that is interesting, and that is utility and playstyle, like how much utility. But this is a minor voice. More on that a little bit. The minor voice on that official topic is that being able to offer horizontal choices. Horizontal meaning that there are multiple ways to express yourself, like achieve the task, and while not compromising on the identity of the Sentinel, right? At the moment, the other consensus is that usually most of the tanks are in a proper place. They have their identifiable mechanics. They vary in their expressiveness, however, they have identifiable mechanics that separate them. Whether this is coincidentally beneficial or detrimental depending on the content, right? Like the endgame content. In this particular trial, the concern about tank specialization and flavor and pros and cons and disadvantages of each and one of them was offset by how this current trial, which I haven't done in Masters because going to be very direct, I care not to, because of the way it's designed and the way that it dictates how much time and presence you must have to do these things. That's a personal choice of mine. However, from people who have done the trials, there is a de-emphasis on the tank's role that highlights the pros and cons between the tanks. So outside of this trial, which have dampened the need for tank revisions or enhancements, most of the time Sentinels are typically viewed as the one that don't have damage reduction or mitigation during their peak operation times, which is during like their unstoppable phase, right? And then the flexibility is that most of their animations and skills are not on demand compared to the other two. The problem with this type of feedback, in my opinion, is it sounds like oftentimes people want the cake and eat it. So logistically, if you constantly focus on what tanks have and don't have between each other, it also makes them like each other. So if a tank doesn't have damage mitigation, it can horizontally have something else that isn't damage mitigation. And then if a tank has a damage mitigation, it can horizontally have something that is lost due to it, right? Like, that's the idea. They are, if the two consensus combat each other, like they're hypocritical to each other. On the one hand, they want the tanks to be identifiably themselves. So like Sentinels with their health dependent, high aggression, physical dependency style, and then the Vanguard doing their thing, the Justicar with magic damage related things. They become very distinctively identifiable, the less they are like each other. The idea is you have to measure the performance and design around them in order to make them have utility, right? Because the reason why that is the argument is everyone compares performance, like, and everyone, I mean the ones that are very vocal. They're comparative. Everything is comparative. So if one of the tanks underperform, it's because they lack the solution is because they lack something the other tanks have. That means that you bring that tank into line, and that's the form of thinking and feedback constantly in this game. Where, oh, so what do you want? Oh, you want 3 tanks exactly the same, play the same, because you want them to be balanced. The shortest way to balance 3 tanks is to make them the same, which was actually what happened a little bit. I think they steered the course away from that after a while, but like all the healers were brought in line with each other, and it basically became a flavor swap out for some time, and it still really is. Like, the distinction between the healers have closed up. So are the tanking things when it comes to balance and whatnot. You balance things, you make them more and more like each other. I think that's the major consensus. So with that said, then most of the concerns or additions or people desire is that all the tanks do all the things while also doing what each other does at the same time with that option, right? So that means if you play a Justicar, you have all the choices that a Sentinel has, and you have all the choices that a Vanguard has. And it is through those choices that you get your flavor style. However, their function should not be imbalanced towards each other. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like playing a game with multiple classes. And that goes to my TLDR, because I don't want to belabor this part too much anymore. I said this a couple times before. The community on the one hand, the existing community on the one hand, loves the idea of distinction, right? Like Paladins, Justicar should feel different from a Vanguard, and a Vanguard should feel different from a Sentinel, and maintaining and playing to those distinct identities. So they would suggest those fun little playful things. And then those same people are the people like, yeah, you know, tanks are in a good place. Like, you can be successful with the Vanguard, you can be successful with the Sentinel, then you can be successful with Justicar. Skill issue, quote unquote, right? And when they're asking for feedback, others would take it as, oh, how do you improve the experience that you already have with the various tanks? And this time we're talking about the Sentinel. It would be to have the other choices. It would be to have choices of Justicar and Vanguard baked into Sentinel, because in this game, it was built upon the old style of MMORPGs. You identify as a class. You identify as the class you invested in. So you want that class to have all the flexibility of the entire game. And for me, since this game has transferred into a live service model, it has, in my opinion, Cryptic, Tika, Arc, Perfect Worlds, whatever, they transitioned to a live service model, whoever made the choice, and have, in my opinion, failed. Maybe intentionally, I guess it wouldn't be called failed. They have avoided or deliberately designed around not unifying the player as a singular player. They continue to double down on designs that continue to lock a player into identifying themselves as a singular class, a singular character, because the vertical progressions are incredibly aggressive, regardless of like account bound mounts, account bound certain things. That lessened a bit of it, but it's still genuinely focuses on putting all your eggs in one basket. So whenever you're asking for feedback, it's always balance, balance, balance. Like, since I can only play this class and I only want to play this class, the balance is give me all the things that the other classes have. So it's classes. I said this before. It's classes. It's basically pseudo-racism, discrimination, segregation, however you want. And it's not like in a negative way, like I'm talking about, you know, IRL stuff. I'm talking about segregation of class. Like, to discriminate between the class is how feedback is given in this game. You discriminate. When Sentinels do not have this, you discriminate against Sentinels. If Justicar doesn't have this and the other two have, you discriminate against Justicars. So that's kind of the narrative. Like, oh, they have this, we should have this. They have that, we should have this. We don't have this, we have this. They, if they're benevolent, they should have this. That's the idea. For myself, when I play a live service game nowadays, like I said this quite a lot with like gacha games, even gacha games, right? The idea is you are the player. You have agency over everything that is given to you. So the developers, when they publish something, you know, with the publishers, anything you acquire is all accessible to you. You're not locked into something. So whenever a developer and a publisher says, hey, check out our new content, it applies to everyone. The more feedback you get, like when someone, you know, they put out surveys before, they put out surveys after the fact, where like a new module comes up and they ask the satisfaction, rate your satisfaction with specific parts of the module. I think one of the most important questions they should be asking themselves is, when they release a new module, are you excited? Is this relevant to you? Because for me, I would say it's going to be a very big telltale sign that if Dika releases a survey that tells you, what do you care about? They're going to have different answers, because the community is classes. It's going to be dependent on the specific interest of the thing they locked in. It's no longer like necessarily content driven. It's class dependent satisfaction. So if your content is not appropriate and satisfy the particular class, you will get complaints about that class. I can illustrate. Gear. Is there gear for a healer? Is there gear for a tank? Is there gear for DPS? And then if you get the long-standing community, they would even go as far as like, okay, I see tank gear, but this tank gear works better for a Vanguard than a Sentinel. And then the Sentinel gets the second hatchet, but they really butchered the Justicar. That's like, I would be pretty confident saying that is the majority of the conversation. It is constantly bickering and going back and forth, condescending, or trying to be like snide or righteous indignation, like I have the moral high ground, or situation where, oh, I'm, you know, trying to help you out. I can make everything work. It's like, yeah, that's great. You can make everything work. The game is not designed in a manner that someone who makes everything work understands the accessibility problem, and then it is designed when someone doesn't have the accessibility to be ignorant and not interested in things, right? So you have these two arguments. One person who's like, oh, you know, it's good enough. Everything is good enough. That's great. That's kind of the ideal position. But those good enough people are those who have everything. They have accessibility to everything. And that is not the common experience of new players. So like, there was a comment, which will be my segue, where there's a comment that people are hopeful that they're still invested in the growth of this game. Well, if the growth of this game deals with accessibility, it really does. It's nearly one-to-one with accessibility. Then abolishing, in my opinion, or discouraging and introducing quality of life that makes the player the center focus, not what the player is playing. Like, the content takes center focus once the player stop like psychologically identifying to a section of the game. Like, oh, I play a priest, there's nothing, or like, sorry, not a priest, but I play a cleric, and oh, the future patch, it has nothing to do with clerics, so I'm not interested. Like, well, you're the player, so when you play a game, everything in the game should be interesting to you. Should. That's not what happens in this game. Whenever they ask feedback, it's like, oh, here's can we get your feedback on Hunter Ranger? Like, what about the other Ranger? What about all the other DPS? Like, the idea is that it is baked into the identity and mindset of the community, and even the publishers and the developers, or maybe not the publishers, the developers have the same mindset. So my thought is, well, in a live service model, that's not going to grow anywhere. You're going to be trapped in an indefinite loop of balancing second-class citizens and first-class citizens over and over again, and it restricts the liberties of the game, and the game becomes arguably no more complex, no more different than it was 16 years ago. Not 16 years, 13 years ago. Or I guess we're going into 12 years ago. And that is a good or bad thing for some people. Some people love playing the same level of nostalgia for 10 plus years. I already talked about the whole coffee thing, right? If it's a great cup of coffee, you rarely ever change it. Fair enough, right? No bads or goods here. The idea is that live service, when a patch comes out for a successful live service game, generally when a new patch comes out, everyone's covering it because it's relevant to everyone. In Neverwinter, whenever you get feedback and ask for things, it's always, oh, us only cares about this. Us don't have this. They have this. And this module is for trial people. Oh, the most exciting thing is for masters runners instead of advanced runners. Oh, the loot is only support heavy and the loot is not for DPS. That's kind of the general, it's constantly the center of every feedback and whatnot, and it still goes on. So I have one last thing that I want to talk about, because the community manager posts like collecting feedback for Sentinel and maybe Vanguard. I didn't see a post for Justicar, right? The alternative person, like the influencer that's tied to this game, many of the influencers that are available, they decide to do like this collective tank initiative, the things to fix about tanks, and they released like a massive document that was trying to collectively be modified while also being posted in Discord. And all of those changes, that they're interesting changes. Like, I don't really hate them or like them or have too much commentary. The idea is it's all the vast majority of the changes were scaling tweaks. They were scaling tweaks in order to place each tank in line with each other, while trying to preserve their like distinctive flavor, right? There was less design, more optimization and iteration, and that's fair enough. Like, you can do that for days, right? Lower the frame count on this, increase the ratio on this, work inside a box. So for me, I think the vast majority of the document was really good. It was like nice. They were trying to work inside a box. And my thought is, that's probably also what the developers are looking for. Probably things inside the box to keep each tank aligned, and then they try to preserve things. There was an interesting point, which was to potentially expand on the identity of the tanks, and I look forward to if any of that comes to fruition. There wasn't much in the way of expanding, right? Largely, it was fixing. When you fix something, it's often trying to do what you know and bring it up to code. It's not innovating. Like, what I typically get excited about is innovation, right? Personal bias. So that whole document to me was like collecting all the information that requires balancing and like polishing. That's fair enough. There was a lot of like data in it, quote unquote data, that doesn't meet standard data things. Like, it was a self-sample, self-selection, and the voting when they were collecting, and they had like bar graphs on rating of utility and stuff, they were all pre-selected. So in no way is that, in my opinion, with due respect for all the time they use, most of that data doesn't disclose anything. It has to require random sampling and like observational recording in order to have that. So it was a bunch of surveys, and the numbers and sample size were statistically already different from each other. And then the commentary and the writing and the editorial thing was presented as though it was unbiased, or like it has some sort of sampling size. That's in my opinion a bit inappropriate for using data. That's like, I don't know, a tech company putting an asterisk on all of their bar graphs, and it's like, there's no standardization nor control studies for this, but here are the bars relative to an arbitrary standard, which is what they did, in my opinion. It was like all the satisfaction or something, they were all gravitating around 7 for their like utility, their form of expression, their survivability. That means that there are no statistical significance in any of those things because the data was spurious. And then the people who are making the content, like writing the content, I think it would have been, in my opinion, more appropriate to present it as an op-ed, as an opinion piece by the 5 or 6 representatives, because they do not represent a data-driven reflection, right? That's kind of one of the limitations. It's cool. It raises awareness. I think there's merit to it. I think it's a little misleading to present it like data that has some impact on presenting a case for your suggestions, right? So that's my loose but neutral investigation. For anyone who's interested, you can probably find it in their Discord, and it will probably stay up for as long as I know, because the user who posted is one of the influencers. One of the influencers for this game, and they are positive person, I suppose. However, I think conservatively, the way the data is, or the opinions that are being presented, is not constituted as rigorous data, in my opinion. Besides that, tanks will hopefully, I look forward to the tank changes. And my fingers are crossed, to wrap this up, right? Whenever live service, a new module comes out, I look forward to change. I look forward to horizontal innovation. And my general consensus, if I want to say, I don't think it's about balancing classes. Like balancing classes, balancing gear, balancing mechanics. I feel that it's more trying to get a player, your entire community, to feel like you're playing the entire game. So rather than viewing as you're a Sentinel player who looks for Sentinel improvements and Sentinel TLC and then quality of life that can build more of your Sentinel, you're looking at any change gives you more tools. For example, if you find that the next boss, Justicar, is the GOAT for it, and Vanguards and Sentinels are not, you as the player are all 3. You are a Vanguard, Sentinel, and Justicar. What you do is when you see a new piece of content, you're trying to tell yourself, which tool in my shed am I going to use? And everyone is going to start reforming that, right? Then each player identifies as a player. They don't identify as a subset of their class. Now, this might not be great. Mentally, I don't think people enjoy this type of thing when they play these certain games. They like being identifying as their class. Like they're prideful. They enjoy being recognized as a good like Vanguard player or a good fighter, for example, or a good barbarian or representative of a wizard or a hunter. So, or ranger, I mean. And that's fair. I'm not here to like try to gaslight people like, oh, your life is so much more brighter if you see yourself as a player who commands all of those skills. Like you can play any class because the game encourages you to play those classes. So in long, like a shorter story, maybe a long story, a slightly shorter, is I look forward to changes that adds horizontally to all the classes, like a subsystem, a new gear slot, a new skill slot, third paragons to every single class across the board. That's what I look forward to. Horizontal development. It creates more style. And no, they don't all have to be balanced. It's just flavor of the week. You can do it one at a time because expecting paragons to be added to all the classes is outrageous, right? Or at least in this case, you add one paragon to that. And with that, I look forward to every quality of life that focuses on live service. As in, the next couple quality of life is that all of your gear, all of your currency are unified across all your classes. So then when they ever introduce a paragon, in my opinion, there wouldn't be an excuse to say, oh, I can't play the warlock. All my gear and resources are on the paladin. Like, hey guys, our next patch, our next module, it centers all around the warlock's new paragon. And then you would have some people sitting there, it's like, well, I don't play a warlock. I mean, this is useless. Like, this is a garbage module. How am I going to play a warlock? Guess what, guys? We're also releasing quality of life upgrades where all of your currency across all your classes and all your tunes are unified. And now you have no reason to not try out our new paragon. In fact, we've created a dungeon and a special event that you can have all warlocks in the class, in the party. It's all up to you. It's successful if you all played warlocks if you want. And that, to me, sounds like a pipe dream. Obviously, it sounds incredibly unrealistic. However, what I'm talking about is that's what the a consideration for the future. Like you can put in the foundations, right? Games that have that are games that players don't concern themselves necessarily with what's meta, what's best, in the sense of what they identify. They know what's best and what's meta because they have access to everything. So like a boss that's fought in, I don't know, like PSO2 NGS, for example, the boss can be as intricate and hard and punching as possible. And then there are certainly classes that you play and weapons that you play that are better or worse for you, but you play all of them. So it's not any particular weapon. If someone says, oh yeah, this weapon is really good at it, you play it, right? So people don't think about balancing between classes. They're talking about balancing the bosses. Like, how can you make the boss harder? Because now you have to make a boss and challenge all the players to their greatest limit, which is having access to everything. You can easily challenge someone, in my opinion, um, from a I'm not a developer, but from a teacher perspective, it is quite trivial to challenge a student that only has one skill. They can be really, really great at that skill. Like they could dedicate their entire life to that skill, and you can easily shut them down by taking it away from them. That to me sounds like not as challenging to myself, right? Like, say this kid is super good at puzzle games. All right, we'll make an action-based game, and it would be challenging until it's not, right? And this is no a take on criticizing people's potentials. I think all the Neverwinter, like, it's an ego battle most of the time in the Neverwinter community, but despite the ego, they all, the people who play, their potential is still there, right? All of their potential still exists. Are they playing at their potential? The answer is no. Like, I'm willing to bet it's no. Largely because this game is classes and like discriminatory and whatnot. You're not challenging a player based on the player. You're challenging the player based on the rules you made to lock them into a class so that it's easier to balance your things. Like your boss, like for example, oh yeah, we need a tank mechanic in the boss, and we need a healing mechanic in the boss, and we need a DPS mechanic in the boss. Then we have to balance. Some part of it sounds like you have challenges of balancing because you have to balance between all the classes and archetypes, and then there's challenge to the player where the player has all the tools, and now it's a battle between the developer and the player. And to me, that sounds amazing as a change of pace. Not that it is better than the current system. The current system is the challenges. How can we make it so that we have, I don't know, a splintered community despite being together? They all identify as different classes, and we have to spend an astronomically disproportionate amount of time addressing and consoling each of the subgroups in a small community already. Like, how do we satisfy the warlock players? How do we satisfy the cleric players? The players that I'm not referring to are the players that have everything. The players that are at the top that can basically effectively play the game like a live service game, they don't have any complaints because they make it work. All things make it work. That's fair. The growth of the game is not dependent on them though, right? Because they're not the ones that are going to, like when a person starts playing your game, they don't start there. Like, they come in, they play, and they realize, oh, this person at the top that says the game is good where it is, all the tanks are balanced, I'm always successful, you only have to run it 100 times. All those things, they're nice to say about the game. I totally understand. And they're true about the game. I'm not denying that that is not true. It is true for those people. And they're the loudest and the among the influencers. All the influencers are in that position, right? Most of the influencers are in that position, so they will talk from that position. And yeah, everything is romantic, and because you have a community, you're in an alliance, you're in a guild, and everyone helps each other out. That's great. Sunshine and rainbows. Meanwhile, when you think about how to grow this game, and the first thing you think about is, dang, it lacks all, like, in my opinion, it lacks all the quality of life expectations of a game that is focused on growth. Because the moment you enter this game, you realize, oh yeah, I'm locking into something. Now I'm gonna have to ask specific questions about what I got locked into. Okay guys, like, what is the best class at the moment to start? It's like, I want to play DPS, but what is the best DPS class that is like easy to use with high rate? That's the discussions you get in Neverwinter. It's not which class you find fun. Like, Some people will say, oh yeah, what's the funnest class to play? And then everyone will have a different opinion that will lock that player into those classes, as opposed to say you play what you want. When someone says that you play what you want, that person is not going to get that feeling, in my opinion, because when they play through the game, they will come to realize that, oh wait, I do want to play what I want. But now it just feels like whatever I chosen was not good enough, or it gets sidelined, or it doesn't have these things, right? Those are all of the complaints, in my opinion, that occurs without, like, with indiscriminatory. And most players will go through these phases. They'll go into the game and see that, hey, oh wait, I need to pay attention to meta or whatever is in vogue. So then I get to pick choice and I get runs done and whatnot. And then someone comes by and say, oh yeah, you can just play whatever. If you're good enough, anything works. Like, well, you have to get there. So accessibility has to promote that. The moment they're like, oh, okay, I'll just play whatever I want. Slowly and slowly it creeps up. And they're like, oh, I don't get to play what I want. Maybe I should go to the forums and talk about what I don't have, because I got this impression that I can do whatever I want and choose whichever class, and then realize later that, oh, people keep saying this, but it's not the reality. The reality is there's class demands, class preferences, and the player is not open, like allowed to even develop the impression that they have access to everything. Meanwhile, the ones that have the most authority and the most influence are the ones that are at the top. They are at the top because they have access to everything. So the feedback is constantly condescending and grandstanding, where like, oh, I make this work, so you don't need to improve anything. They're in a good spot because you can be successful in it. Yeah. Now, where are the quality of life changes? Because the quality of life changes for growth would be, you want that feeling, but also at the bottom. Not at the top, at the bottom. So when you're at the bottom, when you play a game, you realize, oh yeah, that's okay. If I wanted to play a barbarian, I'll go through the barbarian, and then suddenly, yeah, I want to switch to the wizard. All that barbarian stuff goes straight to the wizard. Right? So in no way is the player hampered by quality of life changes that double dip on game time. The game time is increased because the player wants to play all the classes, not because they're stuck in one class and then they have to use that class to hopefully get something for another class in which they're not currently playing. They don't play that class to get things for that class. They have to play their primary class to fund another class. That is going to create segregation, favoritism, and whatnot. For people who have all the resources and accessibility, it's indiscriminate because they can be impartial, largely because everything works already. So growth doesn't happen with them. They're there to stay regardless of what type of content you bring out. So I went a lot longer than I was expecting. My TLDR is module 32.5, comes with tank. I guess the most reasonable thing is they're going to try to balance out the 3 tanks, integrate make sure that all the tanks operate in all the functions that are expected of them, and that's as much as you can expect, because everyone's focused on balancing and comparative analyses. In my opinion, the vast majority of people comparatively analyze haves and have-nots, and that means that innovation is not going to happen. Like a new Paragon or a new tanking mechanic added to each tank that are different from each other, that kind of situation. That's a reasonable thing to expect. And then maybe potential quality of life learning lessons from this module, where there's an emphasis on having access to all the classes, like currency being exchangeable to all the classes, so that game time goes up because there's more play time, not more farm time on repetition of the same class. Like they're actually having more experiences. The content can be limited in same, but the player experience changes with each class, right? And when you play through the class, the experience changes. So hopefully maybe something like that as an experiment. And how does this segue into the news? So a big news did happen yesterday, actually. It was within the last day. And I have apprehensions, but what's his name? His name is Jack Emmert. All right, Jack Emmert. He was the former CEO of Cryptic when Neverwinter was released. He was CEO for another 3 to 4 years in the early days of Neverwinter. I think that was like module, we're gonna say like up to module 4, maybe 3 or 4, maybe just 2 or 3. I have a feeling it was around Tiamat times. He was CEO, well, like he was part of Cryptic and the likes well before that. However, we're specifically going to confine it to Neverwinter. Since then, it has been nearly 10 years, 9 years, give or take, since he worked in a capacity that deals with Neverwinter, I guess, to some extent. He technically worked with, like, there was a letter that was released. A statement from Jack, and now he is back as CEO, right? CEO, but he did leave Cryptic roughly 3 years after Neverwinter was released in 2013. He left at 2016, the Cryptic studio, and he worked on many things. He was lead designer of City of Heroes, right, / Villains, and then he was the creative officer for Champion Online, which I don't think City of Heroes and Villains is still around, but Champion Online is. And then he was CEO for Star Trek Online, which is still operational now. And all of them are actually under the umbrella of this organization, Art Games. I think they're technically still. And then he was ultimately the CEO when Neverwinter was launched, right? For those 3 years. So now he's back. During that time though, he joined Daybreak Games, and that was DC Universe Online, which I'm familiar with, and I think it's still running, I think. And then there's Lord of the Rings Online, which I've mentioned a couple of times, and that is technically still running. Yeah, I still see patch notes for Lord of the Rings Online. Dungeons and Dragon Online, I'm not sure if it's in like a static state or a personally host state, but I'm pretty sure that's still going. So this person has stayed within the Western, right? The Western MMORPG. DCU is an MMORPG, but not necessarily Western fantasy, but Westernized MMO. So this guy continued to work on what clearly they love to do. Now they're back as CEO. The last time something like this kind of happened, I don't even know what the position it was, but it was the guy, I totally forgot his name, but now he works at NetEase. I'm kind of curious if he was at all part of things like the more recent titles from NetEase that have been quite successful, right? So the last time I was excited was that person, which I unfortunately do not remember the name of. I did get an opportunity to talk to the person every once in a while when back in the day. Hopefully that person is doing well and making his dream come true, I suppose, with game design or whatever management he has at NetEase. That's where they said he went. So this guy's back, and how does this fill in as a segue? This could mark a change or a return to old things, right? Or to things of old. And in the Discord, there was a lot of discussion. There was an AMA and an interview either earlier today, or the day before about this guy was answering questions. Jack Emmert was answering questions, and obviously the elephant in the room is Neverwinter Classic coming back situation, and no, it's not, right? It's like beyond a shadow of a doubt, so to speak. They voiced, Jack and others voiced that they are focused in the current game. The current game is, they love that game, the players still play this game, and instead of dividing attention, etc. There was a survey for Neverwinter Classic a bit back that sparked this discussion, and probably the root of this question. And that's I think more reasonable to interpret as what type of elements could use a breath of fresh air, a reinvention to be brought back to Neverwinter. So there might be this new shift in repurposing, iterating, and innovating on older things being brought back into the game, which has been happening for a while now, right? In between major modules and adventure forward modules, there have been repurposed content, right? You basically sunset older content. There's still a lot of sunsetted content that can be brought back and iterated. So that classic Neverwinter Classic kind of interest might be a gauge to thinking, people want something pre-module 13 or something, pre-module 16 or whatever module, when the new standard was set over 10 years ago, or not 10 years ago, but like 7 or so years ago. So this could be exciting. The person was very conservative and political in their statement. Basically, some things changed, some things didn't. They love the game. They hope that there are a lot of changes on the hush hush coming soon. There are no promises of particular things that may or may not happen. So I like that, the idea of having someone come back, or a change of pace for the leadership. I don't actually know how CEO fits into game direction at like Cryptic, and how Art Games and Cryptic are handling each other's communications, but it'll be interesting. Yeah, and I don't think most people do know what happens, because company organizations are very different when it comes to their distribution of their responsibilities. CEO of Cryptic could mean something very different than like CEO of OnePlus, for example, or like CEO at Amazon Studios, which rest in peace, I suppose, are very different, right? The hierarchy is different. Like RGG as part of Sega is organized very differently, and then there's a director position versus a company's executive position. So how this will impact the game will be interesting. I do look forward when these things happen, because it's an opportunity to show change, and I'm incredibly biased towards change, to the consternation of others who sit there trying to balance and preserve things. I think preservation can be preserved the way preservation works. Like right now, Sega, Capcom, Japanese developers and publishers are in a frenzy of either re-imaging, repurposing, hybridizing, and also preserving. So I think preservation is really classically done in a way where you quite literally preserve the thing. So sure, Neverwinter Classic, sure. The idea is, though, right now, what's very trendy, and I don't know if this is going to play into the future of Neverwinter, is the idea of taking old or taking pre-existing things and marrying them together to have all of the above. So that's horizontal design. Live service and long-standing franchises are focusing on horizontal design, where they take all the existing stuff and they're not applying vertical innovation to them. They're making lateral moves. A great example is what I saw recently for Resident Evil 9 Requiem. Requiem, the teaser revealed that Capcom, instead of vertically innovating or replacing features that are successful in the Resident Evil game, they now have a game that is straddling, well, not even straddling, compartmentalizing the goods of the two, so making them identifiable. So like Leon, the one character, is reminiscent of Resident Evil 4. And then I forgot her name, Claire? I've got the new character's name. She's derived from Final Fantasy. She's derived from the first person aspect, the village and post village, like village and post village stuff. So they're trying to do both, and they innovate slightly on those things. So there's a hint of subtle iteration and vertical progression that wouldn't alienate nostalgic habit formation monsters that are like long-standing fans, right? While at the same time offering both. So now you have all of the choices: first person, third person, your RE4 feel versus the RE7 post RE7 feel. That's what they're doing. And sure enough, my favorite, like my games are also the same. Like the games that I play are very similar. P5X, for example, you capture horizontally all the different aspects of existing games. If they start with Persona 5, well, P5, P3 is coming around the corner, and P4 is gonna be even later. And you have hubs and live service games, either gacha or whatever your monetary situation is, horizontally branching and simultaneously preserving the identifiable mechanics that make them successful. Heck, there's another another Halo 1 remake, so that's kind of the name of the game now. Iterate and innovate with very small steps as to not to upset the balance of hardcore habit formation, starved, chronic addiction. Not really addiction in a bad way, but more like getting used to something. So the iterations and stuff are not incredibly out of the box. That's safe. It's safe for business and safe for conceptual practice. You're not going from like Neverwinter to suddenly expecting a Baldur's Gate experience or something like that. You're iterating on it. So that's vertical progression. And that's kind of what I described in the first hour of this rant. The Discord, in the Discord, whenever someone provides fixing a tank or providing class things, it's iterating and refining on what's existing. It's making baby steps towards balance. And that's as close as innovation comes. It's, in my opinion, how AI slop will kind of iterate in the future as well, where AI slop becomes less sloppy over time, right? You innovate and you refine with very baby steps. Apple products, Apple technology, right? You iterate in baby steps. You don't make large sweeping movements. Where you can test things is keep those existing things that work and you innovate horizontally. So you add a feature and you test that waters, and if it holds, then you can iterate on those. So each time there's a new thing that is not necessarily dependent on the existing thing, to test it. So that's kind of where I feel Neverwinter will likely go. Every half module, so the next module, module 32.5, will be something that's horizontal. It will be something, it will likely, obviously I can't predict the future, and I have no affiliations with Neverwinter or Cryptic anymore, nor do I have any association with any other influencer who claims to have insider information, or they have like direct contact with developers, which makes them somehow better or more insightful. This is kind of the way of Neverwinter. Somehow seniority, nepotism, and length overcomes objective truths about things, like, oh, I've played this game for 13 years, therefore it entitles me to understand more than someone who played it for 2 years. That situation. This is kind of the community that you have to get used to. You either embrace it or you don't, right? Or maybe you're meh, like I am. Or anywhere in between, right? So my thought is, with the return of an older figure who's CEO, again, not sure how much control or influence the CEO has. The last time I thought there was a director as well, and a creative director. It's yet to be seen. I think growing this game requires, or likely requires, sufficiency in the idea that quality of life changes will involve iterating and refining very slowly and in baby steps, which is what Neverwinter has been doing. The age-old balance, slightly innovating, but it just kind of feels the same 90% of the time, because you have a long-lasting game, people are afraid of change, right? That's the human condition. So you have that part, and then you have a side part that's trying to help the community grow with live service. And so module 32.5 is going to be experimental. It might introduce a subsystem. If that subsystem is not popular, they'll scrap it and repurpose it into an event, like Slaughterhouse. Slaughterhouse is an example. They're going to continue doing it until one is incredibly favorable. Then it makes it into the mainline module. And the mainline module will incorporate that subsystem permanently. And then that subsystem can then undergo its balance and feedback. I think that's quite healthy. It's a balance between catering to what I consider as essential, necessary quality of life that will grow a community, because now not grow an existing community, lead to growth of more communities, more sub-communities, like the community that doesn't exist at the moment, which is the next horizontal progression, right? A community that is built on desiring another subsystem that resonates with them. Right now, there hasn't been a new subsystem in a very long time that causes buzz or introduction. Those who are already here will stay with the content it is, and they actually spend, in my opinion, more time trying to preserve the same things than interesting different players, because different players would create more noise. So to me, I think they're gonna try to do both, but very compartmentalized. So every half module will have an opportunity of creating a new sub-community slowly. And that sub-community can welcome new players, because that new mode could be the defining thing. The new subsystem could be a new defining thing. All the existing subsystems will not necessarily interact with them yet. And then when it becomes popular enough, it can be integrated into the main game. One of my favorite series, Like a Dragon, for example, Like a Dragon series from RGG, all their games are nearly cumulative. The game just constantly get even more, and they're not a live service game. They don't run a live service game. But these games now are often about cumulativeness. to satisfy newcomers, they require accessibility to everything. To satisfy hardcore people, you still have to incorporate everything. And then to gain new people that are different from the old one, they would have to horizontally introduce something, like a new mechanic or something, without sacrificing what already exists. I think that's kind of where the business is now, right? The business and the mentality. If your next game, like, I don't know, like a Dragon 9, for example, like a Dragon 9 is going to be built in a way that all the existing feature sets that were popular before still exist. And then they will experiment with a smaller minority to see if they can recruit another group of players that want that and the rest. So you want the new thing that didn't already exist in order to introduce to an old thing. And Neverwinter is missing that so far. Right now, the CEO made a comment about growth, in my opinion, which most CEOs would like to think that they have the secret sauce to growth. And Neverwinter has not done anything like that, in my opinion, in many years now. They have not innovated or took a sidestep minority risk. Like, we're not talking about make an entire module about a bonkers feature that is completely isolated from everything else. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about they haven't introduced anything that wasn't balanced, iterating, or concerning existing communities' knowledge. So things outside of the box. Feedback, that huge document on like what is good, what is satisfying about tanks and stuff, they're all within the box. And that's perfectly sufficient to maintain the current existing community, to maintain improving the existing community's experiences with the game. Anything else outside of that box is not included, which means that sometimes you could say improving what the people that are playing will improve growth, but that's not entirely true. I think the most, arguably a bigger driver to improving the growth or the ability of a game to see like there's a future is both innovation and refinement. And in this case, I think the vast majority of things whenever I'm reading is refinement. Like, if the top of the brass, the people say everything is good, you know, it's in a good place, things are successful, add new things. Adding new things mean that it might not be successful. So then you try to make it successful. You add new things and you do it again. You add new things and you do it again. So every time someone says like, oh, it's okay, I mean, you can play all the classes anyways and you'll be able to beat it. It's like, okay, now it's time to add new things. Instead, you have pages and pages of how to make an existing thing that's already good enough, according to the same people who put out these fixes and long documents. It's good enough, but it could be better. I'm like, okay, well, if you're improving an old thing and you're making it better, that usually doesn't lead to a proportional increase in actual new players or people of new interest. It's spinning the same old thing to hope it's better. Like your Great Cup of Joe only appealed to a very selective people, and now you're going to make it even better, nuanced, and that is unlikely to attract new people. Right? The emphasis, the word is new. It's not new when you're refining the same thing. At least in my opinion. And I don't think it's a good or a bad thing. New thing brings new conflicts, right? New thing brings risks, brings internal strife, brings unfocus. Like diversification reduces focus. So all of these are going to be something the CEO has, the old seasoned CEO and the original CEO have to contend with. They have to decide when should we diversify and at the cost of potentially deviating resources from trying to maintain and balance the existing experience that is arguably for most of those people good enough. For myself, I think I've played personally, I think I've played this game long enough that I am willing to like abandon, in my opinion, all of this for the sake of something new. Not that I'm any less enthusiastic or more enthusiastic about Neverwinter, because it's been the same for quite some time. Like I'm being a little hot, that's a bit of a hot take, but it feels samey for the good reasons and the bad reasons, or like the disinteresting reason. It feels deliberately same because I believe that the vast majority of players like samey. They like samey with a little bit of touch of extra finesse each and every time, and I believe the developers do that too. Is with new blood and a change up that a direction of a game like this would actually take a dramatic step sideways, right? Not up, but sideways. And for myself, I'm not that target audience. And I also believe that my opinion is a minority opinion. I wanted, like, if I were to ask, what are my wish lists? Like, if someone says, "What, Maku, what's your wish list?" My wish list is all my characters get consolidated into a single character, and that single character swaps between any class seamlessly. All the gear is unified into one, and that gear is then scaled to the class that you're currently with. So one chess piece to rule them all, and the chess piece has modifiers listed for every single class. It is which class you play that activates the role and or bonus that the class has. So no longer do you loot for separate gear pieces for all the classes. You loot and play to earn the one piece, or maybe like 3 pieces for each of the play styles of every single class. So no longer is it that you identify as one class, one style, one meta. You identify as a player who does all of them. And that will then challenge players to use every single tool in the game. They will have to learn how to play all the roles, all the classes, and there will be no excuse for that because they are all unified as one player. Then when people talk to each other and when they interact with each other, they're talking from the perspective of all the classes. So when someone says, "Oh yeah, I think the Blade Master needs this consideration," they're literally then talking with everyone else who are expected to have similar experiences. Not, "Oh, I've played Blade Master for 13 years. You've only played Blade Master for 2 years. That makes my experience more valuable than yours." Right? That kind of thing. That's like wish list material, right? And then all currencies are unified. Much like most live service games, all currencies are unified. So you earn currencies and they build on a tier system and they lead all to each other. No need to develop new currencies and whatnot. They all unify under one. So vertical progression is unified to the player, not to the class or any like subdivision, because it's kind of redundantly convoluted. Not redundantly interesting or useful. In my opinion, it's redundantly convoluted to make people play more and still be upset about playing more. Most of the time when I think of unification and live services, I want to play more. And I want to grind, like when people say, "Oh, but you don't want to grind more," right? People who want to play the game, they don't worry about how long the grind is because the play is there, right? It's kind of a chicken or the egg situation. So for me, it would be really cool to see that people are going to be excited about additions, not subtractions at the cost of additions. Like, oh, well, if we add this, then it would upset the balance for this. It's like all of it is you. Like, if Warlock gets a buff, it's not a loss for Cleric. You're the Warlock and the Cleric. So whatever buffs you get is always you. But what happens in discussion Neverwinter is what's a buff for someone else, it's a nerf for you. Right? Like, if wizards become more popular as DPS, it hurts all the other DPS because they are less wanted. That's kind of where we are right now. And to me, that leads to a competitive environment that is created by the players in a non-competitive game model and a non-competitive business model. You want your players to consistently always play and be interested in anything you release, because whatever you release is relevant to every player. It's not happening right now, and it hasn't happened ever, in my opinion, because this game wasn't designed from the core up philosophically to be a live service game. It was built to be a subscriptional game in which you had to make the tough decisions, right? And people like that. Like, what I mean is, of a large significant majority, probably larger than my own opinion now, likes that you have to make decisions. You have to commit to a class. You have to commit to playing one way. You have to commit to being the best of one thing. I don't like that most of the time. What makes me, like, I don't play video games for a living, so that's one thing to talk about. I usually play the game of life, and game of life means that you have to be good enough to eat, good enough to sleep well, good enough to go on your mile walk, good enough to cook something for yourself. Those are all those things that make live service possible. Most of the things have to be accessible and good enough. Well, this game is not good enough for any particular person. It's only good enough when you have access to everything. And the access to everything is represented by the top, the people at the top, which is admittedly probably more than 50% of the remaining Neverwinter players, because in my opinion, there hasn't been a new player influx to challenge that. New players are the minority, right? This is the status quo. This is like going into a heavily nationalized or nationalistic environment, and when you raise a avant-garde idea, it gets shot down by moral grandstanding, either moral grandstanding, nepotism, or skill issue, right? So if you say, hey, I saw a couple posts of this, I want tanks to DPS, like tanks should have DPS to make them feel more important, and immediately the old guard says, well, that upsets the balance of things, right? If you want to play a tank, you shouldn't be able to DPS. That's the role you have. That's the role that's baked in. It would violate D&D and all that, however many arguments you have about the status quo. That's what people enjoy here. And I'm not going to go and try to upend that. So the comments that I made just now, they're wish list materials. Do I wish for them to happen at the expense of it? Not really. Rarely has anyone ever asked me what I'm voluntarily, if I'm constantly criticizing other people's things or trying to provide constructive commentary on others, I imagine at some point I would have to put myself, share some of my opinions. So that's one of my opinions. I like modern live service games. Neverwinter is not one of them. However, when a CEO comes back and they want the game to grow, I then have to talk about the dialogue with this. What do they mean by grow? Do they mean cultivate the existing community as growth? Or do they want to grow as in take design risks and horizontal design choices that will attract people for different reasons? Right? Like the existing reasons are not sufficient for the last couple years. Like it's experimentally and historically accurate that whatever they have been doing in the last couple years receded players, not increased the players. And they didn't enrich or promote new player desires or types. Their design hasn't done that either. There were no designs that dramatically was not iterative and within the box. Like what would be a out of the box thing that isn't in MMO, for example, RPG live service thing. Sim life, I don't know, like a house or something. That would be way outside the box of a Neverwinter of Cryptic at the moment, right? And I'm okay with whatever they decide because that's what they choose to do. The thing that I have choice in is the agency is mine, right? I really do hope the other individuals that I might be talking about indirectly, I hope they still feel like they have agency over their choices. If you don't like a game, you don't have to play it, right? If you don't enjoy, if you're like in a love-hate relationship with the game and you're constantly sitting there for hopium, may be an interesting discussion to have about your decision-making choice. For myself, I like talking about these things. If I sit here, I'm not actually playing the game, like the game, because I think Neverwinter, Cryptic specifically, and maybe even Jack Emmert now, represents a unique spin, in my opinion, a unique spin on live service that may bring up a new way of innovating or preserving or growing a community that I have yet to see. At the moment, my commentaries are largely based on historical things, like other existing live service games. And I continue to kind of cover Neverwinter not in the state of its design, because I don't think its design is remarkably that different every module. I try to talk about the accessible parts to me. At the trials and dungeons and stuff, they're still relatively within the box. So if something out of the box occurs, I'll probably be talking about it, right? And then the things that are in the box, I'll be talking about them indirectly, because largely anyone who's like loving this stuff and constantly eating the same meal that they love, you know, the old school mom's cooked traditional grilled cheese, you have plenty of those. Those are perfectly fine to go to those people. I mean, there was an interview by one of the influencers with Jack and whatnot. If, like, for example, my interviews, if I had interview questions, it would be about the future. It would be about innovation. It would be about change. That would be the large focus. I would probably even release a statement that please reserve questions and stuff with a focus on what will change, what will be for growth, not what will be rebalanced, what will be preserved, what are old things that are coming back to the game. Those are ass looking. So as a way to be interesting, I want to I would like to complement what existing things. So I did see a lot of the questions in the AMA on the Reddit and stuff. So much of it is surrounded with preservation, or so much of it is constantly related to rehashing or rebalancing or tweaking something that already exists. And that's perfectly suitable, in my opinion, for the vast majority of the community. Lots of those questions also represent all the people who speak out in Neverwinter. So I know for sure, I think maybe like 70% positive that whatever I'm saying now is the minority. I'm a minority opinion. I don't think that's much different from my life in general, growing up in the United States, right? With parents from a different culture. That's kind of the way I flow most of the time. I like change and innovation. I like seeing things getting stirred, the pot being stirred often. In fact, while it's very respectful and comforting and confidence building when a developer stays with the game for like their entire lifespan or lifetime, I'm a person who, like, that developer, when they spend like a couple years with their game, their desire immediately is to go and start something new. That's the type of individual that I resonate with. You start something, 2 or 3 years later, it's looking great, you pass the baton to someone else and you go on to do something else, right? That's more of a mix. You do something long enough in order to pass it on to someone or have them learn from that, and you go on to develop something else. So in this case, going back to the CEO has gone on to do something and you can revisit, right? It's not one direction the entire time. So I am really looking forward to maybe in module 33 to see if this return talk about how they integrate their experiences from a different game like DC Online, Dungeons and Dragons Online, Lord of the Rings Online, and how that stuff, like new stuff, can, but not new to like Lord of the Rings Online and stuff, be brought to Neverwinter. That's what I'm looking forward to. So that's gonna be the TLDR for today. And wrapping up module 32. Obviously, it's probably not going to happen in module 33. I don't know how long this has been. It's probably going to be like module 35 and 36 by the time this thing happens. And I don't even know if I'm going to be doing this anymore in another 2 or 3 years. So we'll see how fast change happens. It could have been happening in the background. Like Jack was back for a while and they had things planned already and set in motion for this to happen, and then it could happen in the next one. That's kind of interesting. I'm looking for change. I think change is what creates community growth. Iteration, balance, checks, like preservation is a great way to create solidarity in the community. So if the community is already small, solidarity is not growth. Solidarity is reinforcing faith. So you're trying to maintain and keep your existing community. You're preserving something. Heavy focus on preservation doesn't create organically, at least create growth. New interests, new innovations, new things from maybe existing cultures, like existing sub-communities. That's when you start fighting for sub-communities, right? Like if you're carving new things, if say like a D&D online feature comes in, you might attract other D&D online interest, and there will be a competition, community competition. That's like a game that branches out and they want a slice of the open world pie or the FromSoft, the Souls-like pie. That will create rift, conflict of interest, and whatnot. So it is a trade-off. I genuinely think that the solidarity of the dwindling small community, or relatively smaller community of Neverwinter Online players are so solid now that a new blood might not, innovation might not be that scary. Could be wrong, right? So that's kind of the wager. But for now, that's a wrap for module 32. I may or may not cover module 32.5 because I didn't cover Slaughterhouse as well because of their out of the box thing, right? Again, it really does deal with accessibility. if Slaughterhouse was inaccessible to me, and therefore I didn't cover it. I only cover the things that have accessibility to, and that is my choice, so that it reflects the amount of time that I invest. I only show things that I invest. I don't talk up things that I don't have accessibility to. That is hopium and copium, right? However other people say. I don't hope for things to happen. Things that are presented to me, I talk about those things. So the more they hit on masters, the more they hit on guild or alliance qualifications and like high loot things, they're inaccessible to me. Like I do not find them accessible, so we won't talk about them. So if you want someone to talk about gear, rebalancing, making all the tanks feel the same, or making all the tanks do the same function but somehow magically also make them different at the same time, make them different and same all at the same time, probably go listen to someone who's min-maxing their way through Neverwinter and have like a very strong opinion about what's the best and what's the worst. For myself, I would love to be able to have friends of mine or like people I meet like, hey, oh, you guys want to start this game? Here, I'll start with you. I'll start new, like we can go and play this together. At this game, you can't do that. You really can't. That would be the litmus test for if this game is pro community, like pro community growth. They're trying to enter a growth phase. Last couple years, last 6 or 7 years, there hasn't been. So I'm going to dwindle, and my accessibility continues to dwindle until I'm not covering it. So I might not even make it to like module 30, whenever the module that Jake Emmerts gets effect. Who knows? It doesn't take a lot of my time investment, so we could keep up this and cut like corners. All right, folks. So until module 32.5, in another month and a half. So when this battle pass expires, there might be one more battle pass for like 60 days or something. So, or like 3 months. So after this battle pass, so another 50 days, we might hear about it, and who knows, might be back for module 32.5. All right, folks. Again, take care. Hopefully I didn't ruffle too many feathers. I think I largely understand why people focus on what they focus on, and I don't think there are people who are wrong or right. I think there are very clear interests, and they are interests that I am not interested in, like very like emotionally not interested in. Scholastically and objectively, it's very interesting what's going on, like trying to balance these things. I feel like working for Cryptic or like Arc games, this is a really tough and difficult question to answer, and that is super interesting. I'm not emotionally sympathetic nor empathetic towards a specific group that represents the majority. So it's more of a no hard feeling situation, and it's understandable conceptually why those people want the things they want, and no particular group is more right or wrong. There's more so a majority and a minority, right? Until then, hopefully see you guys in the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy, right? Make decisions that allow you to support a habit that you can have, where logging in and playing the game doesn't make you feel bad. Doesn't make me feel bad here, so that's good, right? I'll continue to cover things as long as it's not overly making me feel bad about playing the game. Until then, stay, right? I'll catch you guys later. Keep your great ideas. Feel free to you know, come with hot takes or other discussions, other games as well. There are other games on the horizon that happen to be MMORPGs as well. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. Catch you guys on the next one. Bye bye.